recording. All right. And running the intro. What is up, everyone? Welcome back to No Cap Space, your number one stop for all of your women's basketball coverage. Tyler and Andrew holding it down here today for something a little bit different. Not exactly emergency, but like if you're a Chicago Sky fan, sirens better be going off. With what we have here today, Angel Reese, Andrew, has just dropped an article, an interview with the Chicago Tribune, and for lack of a better term, was talking cash shit as she rightfully should. Let's paint the picture here before we dive into the exact quotes of everything. If you're a newer WNBA fan, if you wherever you kind of stand in this, whether it probably doesn't take you long to figure it out. Chicago has not always been a great organization. Has never really been a great organization. They've been an organization that has had some really, really great players come through, but in terms of facilities, in terms of treatment, in terms, you can kind of go up and down the list. Pretty consistently, Chicago has been in the bottom tier of WNBA organizations in terms of ownership, in terms of investment, and things of that nature. And then Angel Reese comes, and you have an organization that has one of the biggest stars of women's basketball come into town, and frankly, they're not prepared. And what we've seen organizations not be prepared and quickly decide it's time to be ready. And they are willing to invest, even if it takes a year or two, to make that happen. The Chicago Sky had the practice facility on the way, but I don't believe have broken ground yet, if I'm not mistaken on that. And have just consistently felt like a mess from the roster management, from the facility management, from investment, from the ownership. It has felt like a mess, Andrew. And now we arrive here at this article. Any further context you would like to add before we get into reading some of these quotes about just the Chicago Sky organization? And again, to me, before we even dive into it, Angel Reese is not the first player to say anything like this about Chicago by any means.
So I will say a couple things. The first is the groundbreaking, to my understanding, has happened for the new practice facility.
Okay.
However, the timeline in which they said that this thing was going to go up is very far behind, which, happens in construction. Yeah. However, when your reputation precedes you, it's a lot easier for us to look at you and go, what exactly is happening here? The other component to this that I think carries some interesting context is I don't want this to be like a sole rip of Michael Alter, because generally I trend more towards supporting independent WNBA owners as opposed to those with NBA ties, given what we're seeing right now. For those of you that have seen, my video on the Connecticut Sun, like you know very clearly where I stand on NBA ownership and influence versus independent ownership and influence. At the same time, we need to discuss these owners, these ownership groups as sports team owners. And Chicago is a place, as an organization, that generally gets very defensive about the criticism that they take. And so in this video, you're going to get hit over the head.
Yeah.
But there's also a decade plus to force us to ask these kinds of questions. And now the fact that Angel Reese is going out to a major newspaper and basically laying it out ahead of a major free agency period, it's something. It is very much something. We don't get stars of this magnitude making demands of this magnitude and nothing ever comes of it. So that's why it's video worthy. Is the comments themselves are going to warrant change one way or another. It's just about figuring out what that change is going to be. So I will leave it to you to give us the full quote.
Yeah, let's dive into this article. Because I mean, off rip, the very first quote in this article is, "I'm not settling for the same shit we did this year." What a way to lead it off. We have to get good players. We have to go get great players. That's a non-negotiable for me. I'm willing and wanting to play with the best, and however I can help to get the best here, that's what I'm going to do this offseason. So it's going to be very, very important this offseason to make sure we attract the best of the best because we can't settle for what we have this year. That is from Angel Reese. And that's just the kind of first part here. But let's start with that because I mean I think it's a pretty clear. It can't be much clearer, frankly. To at minimum the GM and what the investment was in this roster this season. Obviously, you go and trade the number 3 pick for Ariel Atkins as kind of like your big move. Courtney Vandersloot comes in as well. Obviously, she's out for the season or early on with an injury. Things have not gone to plan in terms of trajectory wise of what you were hoping for from the Chicago Sky. After seeing what they were able to do last year, it felt like there was certainly issues last year, and it wasn't perfect by any means. But between Angel and Camilla and the success that they were able to find, it felt like there was something being built. And it's also no secret that Teresa Weatherspoon and Angel Reese are very tight as well. She gets fired and obviously replaced by Tyler Marsh. And this becomes a thing that, again, it can't be much clearer than this about Angel Reese wants to win. And right now, doesn't feel like the Chicago Sky are on a trajectory to win. For you, Andrew, just that first bit of quotes here, where are we at?
I don't think she's wrong.
Yeah,
you know,
agreed.
I think that obviously there are still some feelings about what happened this past year, and I don't begrudge her for feeling that way. People are going to crush Angel for this potentially, but you know what? This is a totally normal, mature reaction. Like, this is the Zag take I have here is like, you went into the opening of the season clear-eyed and optimistic. You know, Jeff Pagliocca doubtlessly said, trust me, when he fired Teresa Weatherspoon, when he traded Marina Mabrey, when he got rid of Kennedy Carter, kept Angel, kept Camilla, and built a whole new team around it, traded picks away. Like, there was very clearly like a trust the vision, trust the process that Angel was willing to do here. And the vision and the process hasn't worked out. It's completely normal and completely a human reaction to be optimistic about something. It's a disaster. And now you're like, okay, changes need to be made. That's a totally normal human reaction to a situation like this, especially when you have the leverage as a player of Angel Reese's caliber. So yeah. I don't think that, like, even off rip, I don't think we're going too crazy with this. I think she's right. I think she's absolutely right in the open. So continue to see where we go.
Yeah. So that first part is certainly about the immediacy and the roster. The next quote becomes more about the future, and it's something that becomes very interesting to me because, in a way, it almost feels like Angel has kind of put Chicago on a timer here with this quote in a little bit of a way. But here's the quote here. I'm very vocal about what we need and what I want. I'd like to be here for my career, but if things don't pan out, obviously I might have to move in a different direction and do what's best for me. But while I'm here, I'm going to try to stay open-minded about what I have here and maximize that as much as I can. I mean, again, it doesn't feel like it can be much clearer. She is telling the Chicago Sky, get your shit together or I'm gone. And
it's again, an open threat.
It's about as open of a threat as it can get. And again, I don't blame her. This is a franchise that we've seen Kalia Copper leave from and talk about. I ain't ever going back there. Like, this is not anything new for the Chicago Sky. What's new for the Chicago Sky is it being a player of this magnitude in terms of star power. That has not always happened when it comes to Chicago. Like, certainly you've had big names there and genuine star players. But Angel Reese, this is a different, a completely different message and level of message being sent here. Again, it doesn't get much clearer than this. And to me, like I said, the Chicago Sky are officially on the clock. And you have just a couple of years. Obviously, Angel is not entering the free agency this year, still on that rookie contract and everything. And they have a team option as well. But you don't really see trade requests in the WNBA. That's not something you really generally see. With the new CBA, that might change. But as of now, that's not something you generally see. just because the returns and everything, it just doesn't work the same way in comparison to the NBA. It's just not how it just doesn't function like that. But goodness, this is reading. I don't know what the timer is in terms of by the end of this contract, by the end of next season. That is not as clear. But a timer has been set, and it has been put as clear as day that the Chicago Sky need to get their shit together now for Angel Reese, or she's gone. Your thoughts on that quote?
I agree. I think in the long term for what Angel's doing, like this is a play, and it's a smart play. Angel Reese is never going to have as much leverage as she has right now. Maybe when she gets to the end of her contract, but like you're coming off a second consecutive year in which you played pretty solid basketball. You've proven that in the long term, you are an option to build a franchise around. And people can say what they want about the turnovers. They can say what they want about the shooting percentages. She's shooting better this year. She's more of a point forward. Some of that's out of necessity after Salute went down, but she's proving that the top ceiling for her as a player is there, where if she were to walk away, Chicago would absolutely regret it. And I think she knows that. And that is the time to use your leverage as an employee, is saying, you can't do this without me. You can't do this without Camilla. And I think it is very important to note that in a lot of these quotes, Angel is discussing her and Camilla as a package deal. This is not Angel versus Camilla. This is not I am better and you got to cater to me. This is you got to cater to us. And I think that component of it is also interesting and also very powerful, because you're talking about two players with all WNBA ceilings that are still under the ages of 25. And if you lose them both, you have egg on your face in a way that you simply have not as a franchise. And with a franchise that has had a history of egg being on its face.
Whole lot of egg.
Yeah, whole lot of egg. Candace Parker, Courtney Williams, Gabby Williams. Who else? You had just mentioned her name. Is going to drive me crazy now. Kalia Copper, Elena Delle Donne, Salute. I mean, the only person that's really ever gone wire to wire with that organization is Allie Quigley. And Allie Quigley is not a superstar by any means, right? So this is a wake-up call to the Chicago Sky organization. And I think it's a little easier to see where the fault lies this season. Because last year, I was on these shows saying we need a year to see what the actual, who the fault, was when the dust settles, right? Because the argument last year was Kennedy Carter is a lot. Teresa Weatherspoon was a lot. And if the ownership or Jeff Pagliocca said, we are getting distracted by the outside noise and the outside narratives and the rookie of the year race and all this other shit instead of focusing on games, you don't necessarily need, a blow up fight to create locker room problems with that. And I think that's what people are missing about this Chicago situation from last year, is that everything that our sources have indicated to us in No Cap Space, there was no fight. There was no singular blow up moment where all of it fell apart. And if people have been in office settings like this before, you know what I'm talking about. Sometimes there's people that are just daily drains, and you just come in and their energy just wipes you out every friggin' day. They don't need to do anything crazy. It doesn't need to be this giant, blow up of epic proportions. It can just be little stuff every single day that feels like it gets in the way of winning. And everything that our sources have indicated to us is that that's what last year was about. Last year was just a constant daily, like the little tinnitus in your ear until you're like, okay, I got to go to the doctor. And because of that last season, and with that information in mind, it was very fair to say, okay, I can see why you'd want to reset the table a little bit after the drama that followed you last year as an organization. Now, you don't have that cover nearly as much. Like, this all goes to Jeff Pagliocca. This all goes to Michael Alter, the owner, and Nadia Rawlinson, the chairwoman. Like, this goes to the top levels of all of this. Angel Reese saying that, I could leave and walk is a huge deal, because there's a lot of franchises that would want her first and foremost, but also you are Chicago. You're one of the 5 biggest media markets, one of the 5 biggest markets for sport. You're in a place that wants to support basketball, that has a history of high-end women's basketball prospects, and you can't seem to break into this environment. And that's not acceptable when you have a star of Angel's caliber, a star of Camilla's caliber, and you are fighting against, the encroachment of the Indiana Fever. And I don't mean that as a Caitlin Clark thing. I mean it as a Big Ten fan base thing, because 2 cities that Big Ten alums go, if you want to go to a city, you go to Chicago or you come here to Denver. And you are going to get naturally a lot of Big Ten people that are into supporting a Caitlin Clark or even a Kelsey Mitchell, because she went to Ohio State, that are living in Chicago and in Big Ten country. If you want to make your city a home court advantage, you have to care. You have to win. You need your stars to be stars, and you can't get run out of the building when the traveling roadshow is in town. And if I'm getting this charged up about it and I don't even play, imagine how Angel, who is a serious competitor, feels about it. I don't blame her one bit for any of this. I think it's all on the organization to step up at this point, because if you don't, you're going to bleed 2 more superstars in an ever-lengthening death march of superstars that have spurned your organization already.
The Chicago Sky is just the Grim Reaper meme knocking on the doors to every superstar that is rostered by them. Like it's getting wicked. And to go back to the article now, writer Julia Poe, this isn't the direct quotes, but it's kind of a bullet point list almost of things that Angel has kind of gone to, whether it be the owner, Michael Alter, or Jeff Pagliocca. Here's kind of the bullet points here that Julia writes out. She wants expanded office spaces and training facilities to give the organization a more comparable work environment to competitors around the league. Okay. She wants a more dynamic style of play on the court. She wants the Sky to establish a more cohesive identity regardless of personnel. And she wants Coach Tyler Marsh to coach players harder. Those are kind of the bullet points before we dive back into direct quotes. I mean, realistically, to me, a lot of this, I mean, goodness, I can't help but feel like going and experiencing Unrivaled, like opened Angel's third eye, like in a way that like when it comes to like just the organizational stuff, like the awakening of like, oh dang, it's like this is how it can be. And like we heard stuff at Unrivaled of her talking about this, and I just think it has, like, you have that experience, and then you had the lack of success and the season that the Chicago Sky have had, and I think it's just crescendoed into this now. I don't think that the off the court stuff seems pretty straightforward here. Expanded office spaces, like that's all. I mean, asked of an owner and everything. On the court though, I think these are some interesting aspects here. The dynamic style of play, establishing a more cohesive identity, and wanting to have Tyler Marsh coach players harder. Real quick, just on that point, the more on the court aspect there, like what do you take away from those mentions?
To be honest, I think the office space thing is really fascinating.
Okay.
Mainly because, like, how often do you see players advocating for office?
It's gotta be real tight.
That's what I mean. Like, how, like,
that's
like,
fair.
what
Yeah.
are you working out of a friggin' broom cupboard, like Harry Potter's, cupboard under the fucking stairs? Like, where the hell are they working?
Yeah.
That you as a player feel like the marketing department needs more office space. Like, I find that kind of remarkable.
Fair. Yeah, no, that's fair. Yeah.
Tyler Marsh being a little bit too passive is interesting, because I think that's been the thing with all the men's coaches, except for Carl Smesko. I mean, Rashid Mezion said it this year before the Suns' win streak and, the turn of fortune they've had over the last 3 weeks. There was an article, Maggie Vanoni wrote it in CT Insider, and it was Rashid basically saying, like, I was too passive in my first half of the year. I was, letting the players kind of dictate these things, and I need to be the person to take a little bit more initiative and be the one to go after the refs a little bit more, go after my players a little bit more. And, Tyler Marsh getting ejected about a week ago, and looking like he was going to just jump on the floor and swing on one of those officials. I would imagine, like, that's 2 components. People can read into that as like, that's a dude coaching for his job. And I don't agree. I think that's a coach that is trying to throw on a like bring some intensity into his players. Kelly Graves used to do this when I was covering Oregon. Like there were games where he would get teed up for the sole intent of trying to get his team like up, and that's what I took from Marsh getting ejected. But it's interesting to me that outside of Smesko, who's like in his 50s anyway, so like he's an adult, and I think of anybody, he'd be more likely to trend toward being a harder coach than an easier coach. But it is kind of interesting that all of the younger guys who are relatively new to the W are being kind of cast as too passive.
Yeah.
And not coincidentally, perhaps, they're all the worst teams. Like Rashid, Connecticut was at its worst when Rashid Mezian admittedly said he was being too passive. I think the biggest knock on Chris Koklanis is he's passive to the point of being passive aggressive, which is a deadly combination as a coach. And then here you have Angel saying Tyler Marsh is too passive. And, I wonder if there is this kind of more broad discussion to be had about younger male coaches and their feeling of comfortability with regard to being intense with professional women's basketball players. Because, you've seen that in the college game, like some of these older guys who are just kind of consummate dicks, like they may be good coaches, but they're assholes. And they kind of get to the point of, being sort of either pushed out or they are forced to adapt, like a KG or a Scott Ruick forced to adapt. Gino is great at this because Gino always adapts. Like Gino can give you the meanness, but Gino also gives you the tenderness, right? And so I think for those lower tier of coaches, there's a lot of tenderness, but there's not a lot of figure your shit out. And it feels like that was where someone like Teresa Weatherspoon was really good, is like she clearly would pull you or tell you when you were doing shit you shouldn't be doing. And Marsh doesn't seem like he's doing that, but I don't think you should get rid of Tyler Marsh based off that. That's something you can learn as a coach. Like you can learn how to find that balance and get the most out of your players. But I think the fact that Angel's putting it in the press publicly is the message to him of you're letting some people, maybe even me, get away with way too much shit. And you have to establish a more firm and accountable culture in this building to be able to do that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, Angel mentions a different new coach and the way that she has been coaching, Natalie Nakase, as the example of what they're looking for in terms of like an identity, and not necessarily the same identity, but establishing one. This is a quote here. Watching Golden State first, this is kind of funny. I'm not gonna lie. She says, "Watching Golden State, no offense, but I don't think they're more talented than us on paper, but they play hard as hell. So starting at the top, we've got to find the identity of what we're going to be next year, and then roll with the punches of what we can get." That's just generally funny, but that's the point being made of establishing identity. And Natalie has done a fantastic job of that. I mean, otherworldly job of that in Golden State this year. So certainly, in a whole lot of ways, Golden State has become the standard, both on the court for maybe these like kind of building teams, also certainly off the court with the investment and the fan base and everything of that nature. But I do want to kind of look ahead because, as you mentioned, Angel is talking about this as her and Camilla. Like this is a package deal here in terms of this article and what she's saying. This is not Angel alone in terms of, this statement. This isn't her putting herself on an island by herself by any means. But and this is not a quote, but just in writing here from the Chicago Tribune, Reese anticipates a substantial overhaul this winter. She believes there are only two guarantees on the Chicago Sky roster in 2026, herself and Cardoso. Between the expansion draft and free agency, the rest of the group is unknown. Reese identified free agency needs across the roster, including a backup post and a fleet of shooting guards who can get downhill and shoot three-pointers more efficiently than this year's backcourt. But her main concern surrounds the point guard position, and goes into essentially this is a quote. We can't rely on Courtney to come back at the age that she's at. I know that she'll be a great asset for us, but we can't rely on that. We need someone probably a little younger with some experience, someone who's been playing the game and is willing to compete for a championship and has done it before. Goodness. Like, I mean, just again, laying it all completely out there. It could not be more Like, there's no coded language here. There's no like, well, maybe. No, she's telling us straight to our face exactly what she thinks about this roster, about next year's roster, and what it needs to be. I'll stop there before we kind of get into the last couple of quotes here. Your thoughts on that? To a point, again, it makes sense, and I don't feel like she's wrong. It's just, honestly, from a W perspective, we haven't seen a player of this magnitude really just let off and fire such direct, kind of, not complaints. I don't want to use the word complaints, but like just direct right at the organization like this, direct shots. We haven't seen this.
The spirit of DT lives on in this league. I love this so much. First of all, the day Courtney Vandersloot leaves this Sky team and goes on the podcast with Sue Burden-Rapinoe,
woo,
without
Sue be on it too with the pod. I ain't gonna
lie. Without going super deep into it, because I don't want to out any sourcing on our end.
Mm-hmm.
That dynamic
there
is a dynamic there between Courtney and Angel. I will say that.
Yes.
I don't disagree with Angel though.
Don't at all.
Like when they signed Sloot, all of us were like, "That's the point guard option." Like Vandersloot, no,
man. I guess
like that's who you're bringing onto the
better than nothing. But
so again, I don't think Angel's wrong. I will say having the point guard and demanding the point guard is kind of interesting. Considering I see your future as like upgraded Alyssa Thomas. So is the need for a point guard really and truly necessary? If you are going to be point forward, I guess you would want maybe a second facilitator up there just to be able to bring the ball up and be able to kind of organize the offense. And then you can be the primary ball handler that gets, a touch at the top of the key to really start facilitating the flow. But I mean, she's not wrong. This is this shit that we've been saying all year. They need better shooters around them. The two of them can work. I refuse to buy into the idea that the two of them can't work. They're both really good passing bigs. They don't really occupy each other's space the way that we think that they do. Camilla does have that little elbow jumper. Angel is developing her range, and it's going to take a little bit of time to like fully unleash that. But like, she can shoot. If they try and drop on her, she can still shoot. I mean, that can work. So again, none of what she's saying is necessarily wrong. Like if she had come out there and was like, "We need A'ja Wilson," I'd have been like, "Okay, cool.
Hold on, okay,
I want $1 million, but like, there's no lottery ticket coming to my house."
Right.
But everything she's arguing is everything we've argued all year. Yeah. So again, this is a situation of a player that is understandably bothered at what's going on this year, but all of her assessments on this are right. So I can't knock her at all for any of this, frankly.
Yeah, no, I'm completely right there with you. Again, it's more than anything just the shock that we're actually hearing it. Like I believed it, and like I fully expected this to be the thoughts of Angel Reese. Like if I was guessing how she was probably feeling about this season, but to actively hear it is again not something we get in the WNBA, and certainly not from a player with the star power of Angel Reese. Like this just doesn't happen. And as you mentioned, the idea of asking just, for A'ja Wilson, she closed it out. And these are the last quotes here. We need great players. And I don't know what will attract that. Maybe they'll see the practice facility will attract that. We'll see. But the priority is being able to convince free agents that this is an organization that is going in the right direction. Honestly, it would be a leap of faith for a great player to come here and show that this is something that they want to be a part of, and we could bring that championship mentality. Look,
that is the most revealing comment of the entire thing.
That is a massive comment, because again, she's saying, I'm happy to go. I am willing to try and convince players to come here, but what do I have to work with in my pitch besides coming essentially to play with me and Camilla? That's it.
Beyond that too, that's a reveal that the players' perception of Chicago is awful.
Yes.
Like if you are referring to coming to your organization as a leap of faith for a superstar, that tells you that everybody at Unrivaled said, "Girl, you got to get out of Chicago." Like every single one.
Yeah.
Because if this was a competent organization, it wouldn't be a leap. It'd be like, we're going to go get somebody. We're going to bring somebody here. It's not saying that Angel and I have to do, a salesperson's job of pitching them on coming here, which is downright impossible when you consider New York is a gold standard organization right now. Phoenix is throwing a ton of money into their organization. Cleveland is going to do the same. Portland is doing the same. Who else? Golden State is a gold standard feeling of an organization right now. LA is putting more money in, although I've still got some smoke for that ownership group because it was a lot of talk about Magic wanting to get involved, but I haven't heard shit about doing something away from El Camino Community College as a practice facility. Atlanta, I think, is on the come up. I think with this year of success, there's going to be more investment. It wouldn't surprise me if you started to see more of a push to, get away from Force 10 as a practice facility, or even try and get more games in State Farm. Indiana's top of the line right now. Connecticut has an ownership mess, but like their culture is clearly good and their young talent is really, really good. And Connecticut as an organization, for all of the agita that we want to levy their way, Connecticut wins. Like they're a good, competent organization. It's just the money stuff and some of the ownership stuff that is, a little bit murky right now. Chicago doesn't have any of that. Chicago literally is just like an organization that's penny pinching. Yeah. It reminds me a lot of how James Dolan used to run the New York Liberty, but the issue to me is not a lack of care here. And I do think Michael Alter gets a lot of shit because he's the money man and the majority owner. I don't think we give enough smoke to Nadia Rawlinson, who's the chairwoman of the franchise, because this has been her stewardship as well. And she is the person who presumably understands, the players and the organization and how all this works. And again, this is an organization that when the Chicago Tribune, who it's funny that they're the ones reporting this, but there is a big difference between reporter and columnist. They're two different.
100%.
Like, this is the same newspaper that last year ran an editorial board story about how Kennedy Carter should be criminally charged with assault on Caitlin Clark.
I was shocked to see it come from the Tribune here.
The team never came out against that. You can't punish the reporter for that, obviously, and you shouldn't. But like the team should have had a statement in response to the ed board to defend your player and defend your organization. And the fact that they didn't was a little bit of like a conspiracy brain tell for me of, okay, maybe they're not happy with the perception that the Chicago Sky has right now. And that's the only, answer I can think of, as I've said on previous pods before, about why Jeff Pagliocca basically just like did a complete 180 from the team that he was building. And, everybody at the top is at fault here. This feels like Tyler Marsh and the players all feel like they are kind of stuck in the maelstrom of bad front office and bad executive leadership. And in Chicago, it really has to change. I don't think Chicago is necessarily a historic organization. I don't think it's one of those organizations where like the league is better when they are better. But I do think it is an organization that needs to be good. You need that presence in a place like Chicago. You need your Midwestern hub city to be good. And to be quite frank, the entire city's sports franchises aren't very good right now. Like there is a place for you to take over the summer with the Cubs and the White Sox not being good, the Fire not being good. But the other thing is the Fire are moving into downtown Chicago here in the next few years. They have a stadium plan. You need to move fast or you are going to get lost in the maw of summer programming in sports in this city. You're going to have 3 other major league franchises with their own downtown stadiums that are going to be cannibalizing the market. You have Angel fucking Reese. Do something with it, win games and do something with it. And I don't think that she's particularly wrong here because I want to be entertained. Like, that's what I am here for. I am not here so owners make money. I do not care about that. Seize the means. I'm here to be entertained by the players. I'm here to be entertained by the games. And that requires good coaches and good stars and good supporting casts. And that's what Chicago needs. Because I want to watch Angel Reese and Camila Cardoso play pick and pop at the highest level. And that is what is more important to me. And so to that end, the players and the coaches, if they say you need to get them something, get them something. Point blank, period.
Yeah. Look, if they weren't already, they officially are now. Chicago Sky, you are on the clock. And if that clock hits 0 and you have not properly invested, if you have not essentially met these demands from Angel Reese is going to be in a different WNBA uniform.
Mm-hmm.
And it might not just be Angel Reese. Camila Cardoso might be right behind her. And this could not be a clearer draw a line in the sand. This is where I'm at. What are you going to do? How do you respond? And Angel Reese could not have made it more clearer. And I agree in the sense that I don't feel like she's wrong. Is this wild? Is this newsworthy in terms of seeing a WNBA player do this? Is this different than usual? Absolutely. But wrong? Certainly not. I think she is spot on across the board. Look, I mean, I'm excited for this. And now we get a message in the chat of the Chicago Sky posting about Angel and like been doing PR for that's great timing. But folks, Andrew, our podcast just dropped, I believe, as well, right?
Mm-hmm. All up top.
Yeah,
Shawnee and Greer.
Lob it up.
Shawnee and Greer taking the lead, talking about the WNBA standings, the worst possible playoff matchups for each team in the first round, and Arike Ogunbowale for first team all WNBA, question mark, exclamation point, shocked face emoji. They talk about it all on Ball Up Top. So be sure to keep an eye on that, and be sure to keep an eye on all of our content. I am going to be in Las Vegas this Thursday for the MVP battle between A'ja Wilson and Fee. So we'll have boots on the coverage there, and I will be going live from Michelob Ultra Arena, or actually T-Mobile Arena. I think they're bringing it to the big arena for this one. Nice. But I will be live on YouTube after the game, taking all your questions, sitting in the stands, and we will chop everything up as we get closer and closer to the playoffs. And we got more content coming for the playoffs too, so get excited.
Yeah, absolutely. We got a ton coming your way, so make sure you're tapped in across the board. NoCapSpaceWBB.com as well. You can go find the podcast there now. If you're listening, it'll be up on YouTube a little bit later. But if you want to get that early listen, NoCapSpaceWBB.com. And, of course, all the social media, so you're tapped in across the board because the playoffs are inching closer and closer. They're going to be here before we know it. They are nearly here, and we are going to be your number one place for all of your playoff coverage and talk. So make sure you stay tapped in with us here at No Cap Space, and we'll see you next time.